In my perfect world, the saying is actually better never than late. Anyhow, in today's issue, we will delve into three continual JKD disputes that have sparked interest and conversation here on the interwebs. We'll explore Bruce Lee's three different arts, the visibility of JKD in MMA, and the legitimacy of Dan Inosanto's certification by Bruce Lee. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel. Welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast number 268. This is the one about Jeet Kune Do in the news. As you're logging in, please be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button, and feel free to continue doing so throughout the broadcast. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. Okay, so let's get right into this. So here's what happened. This is a post from my good friend, Richard Torres. Very often what happens is when people put up the three certificates, it's Dan Inosanto's three certificates, the Junfan Kung Fu Institute, Tao of Chinese Kung Fu, and Jeet Kune Do. But Richard put a little twist on it here. I think one is James Lee, one is Ted Wong, and the other one might have been, or maybe both are James Lee. I can't really tell from here. Anyhow, but it was showing that there are three different certificates and one art. And this really speaks to, since none of us were there, okay? Based on what we know about Bruce Lee, it's fairly safe to assume that the Junfan Kung Fu Institute certificate was something that was issued to everybody. Not everybody, to anybody who was a member of one of the institutes, whether or not it was Bruce Lee who was training you, or if it was one of the institute group leaders, Asano, James Lee, Taki Kimura, that certificate could be issued to anybody. The Tao of Chinese Kung Fu, as has been said, you had to be personally and privately trained by Bruce Lee. And then same thing for the Jeet Kune Do certificate, at least in the beginning, right? So the thing that comes out of this is the whole claim that there were three different arts. And I've said it before, and I will say it again. That was quite an inartful pronouncement. Now, I know a little bit more about why it was expressed that way, or I'll put it this way. My opinion on why it was expressed that way is because it was easier to say there were three separate arts, rather than saying, well, there were three separate phases or eras or what have you, right? Now, in terms of, I've never heard it explained to me what the three separate arts were, that there was something completely different being taught at the Junfan Kung Fu Institute that was not being taught in the Tao of Chinese Kung Fu. And then again, there was now new material, completely different material being taught in Jeet Kune Do, right? I think that these are manifestations, to use a hoity-toity word, of Bruce Lee's evolution. There was this certificate, then it's like, okay, I need to have something more special for people who have trained privately with me. So who might not even be members of the Junfan Kung Fu Institute. So we'll call this Tao of Chinese Kung Fu. And then when Jeet Kune Do became its own thing, Jeet Kune Do became its own entity, so to say, right? So to speak. There was now an amended certificate that now said, instead of Tao of Chinese Kung Fu, it said Jeet Kune Do. I can see it as just evolution of Bruce Lee's thought process, right? But again, I will say, if it had been me who had been asked, I might not have put it as three separate arts. But again, if you don't have a bone to pick, so to speak, with anyone, then that three separate art thing, even if you don't agree with it, it's not a big deal, right? You don't go, oh well, somebody's trying to claim this or somebody's trying to claim that. It's not a big deal. You just move on. The other thing that came up in the news was, and this was kind of strange for me, because when I saw it, I thought, man, am I in another part of the internet where these kind of inane comments and questions show up? And this is the whole thing about why Jeet Kune Do isn't seen in MMA. All right, so here, simple answer. Jeet Kune Do is an approach to martial art training. So how are you going to see an approach to martial art training and be able to say, oh, that thing there that you just saw is specifically Jeet Kune Do? And keep in mind, right? Keep in mind, if we go back to let's call it the structure of Jeet Kune Do, right? From Wing Chun, from boxing, and from fencing. What are you going to be doing? You're going to be defending, attacking, counter-attacking, or what have you. What techniques are you going to use? You're not going to use anything that is drastically different from anything else that somebody is doing. See, so the whole thing about Jeet Kune Do, what is there that you do in Jeet Kune Do that you go, oh, look, that's Jeet Kune Do, as opposed to that other thing there, which is not Jeet Kune Do? It's almost as if you haven't really read what Bruce Lee has written. You know, there's this little thing called Liberate Yourself from Classical Karate. And in it, he says that I have not set Jeet Kune Do as distinct from this or distinct from that. So you got to kick, you got to punch, you got to grapple, right? That's what goes on. It goes on in Jeet Kune Do, goes on in MMA. Now, here's the thing, right? In the 1960s, in the late 1960s, the way people were training, what they were training in Jeet Kune Do, what they were talking about in Jeet Kune Do, the freedom to do this and the freedom to do that, it's only JKD people that were talking that way. That's what made it distinct and separate as such way back then, 60 years ago. Today, so to speak, the rest of the martial art world has caught up to Jeet Kune Do. You see? So the training methods that were unique back then, it's like I said this in a demonstration that we did a couple of weeks ago. Everybody has focus mitts now. Everybody did not have focus mitts. Even when I started 40 years ago, everybody did not have focus mitts. But now kick shields, even worse. Not everybody had them. The JKD people did. JKD people were the pioneers. So that's what was distinct and separate and unique as such. It's not that way today. So what are you going to see? If you see people intercept an attack in MMA, you don't go, oh, look, that's Jeet Kune Do because he intercepted. Interception in Jeet Kune Do did not come from Jeet Kune Do, did not come up, right, organically, spontaneously in Jeet Kune Do. The idea of the stop hit comes from fencing. So interception as a counter-attacking method, as a counter-offensive method, existed before Jeet Kune Do. So it's very likely that you can see somebody else perform an interception. Doesn't make interception unique anymore. But I'm willing to concede that there are people who are influenced by Bruce Lee's ideas, MMA people influenced by Bruce Lee's ideas. Some of them we know about, others we don't know about, right? what's the guy? Saint Pierre. There's video of him talking about longest weapon to closest target or what have you, right? Okay. Now, I don't know because I'm not, big into the UFC and MMA world or what have you. I don't know if he was trained and introduced to that by someone in the MMA world. I do know that somebody like John Jones was trained by Kevin Seaman. So there are MMA people who have been legitimately trained by legitimate JKD people. Okay. But when you see them move, when you see them perform techniques, right? Their techniques are not going to be different from anybody else's technique who was not trained by a Jeet Kune Do person. Again, I am not saying that people are not influenced by. I'm just saying, I find me the specific technique and go, that right there, that's the Jeet Kune Do technique, and nobody else has these techniques in MMA or anywhere else in the martial art world. So why isn't Jeet Kune Do seen? I did a podcast episode about this, you guys might remember, where I talked about Jeet Kune Do's invisibility. It's a principle. Jeet Kune Do is principle oriented. That principle in action is not necessarily going to look specifically different from anything else. Again, it sounds almost as if you didn't really listen to Bruce Lee. A punch is a punch, right? When you first start, when you know nothing. When you start getting into it, the punch is no longer the punch. Now, when you evolve out of it, a punch gets back to being a punch. So this whole idea about looking for Jeet Kune Do in MMA to be able to say, no, that's not where it's at. Pretty much dissolve it already. The third news item, this I was actually aware of, but it didn't make it into the news category for me. But my good friend Brooks Long did ask me something about it. So I thought I'd mention it. However, in mention it, I don't necessarily want to call attention, even though I will end up doing so. I don't necessarily want to call attention to this ridiculous item. Here's one of the things that's ridiculous about it. It really is evident of the world and the technological world in which we live, wherein somebody who knows little to nothing but is good at video editing is able to make a compelling video that attracts eyeballs. But the content of the video, what is being said in the video, is ridiculous. So here's what I'm talking about. The fact that on one certificate, it says Daniel Inosanto, but on another certificate, it says Dan Inosanto. Okay. Now, what you might notice also is that on one certificate, the name Bruce Lee is written out in long form. In the other one, it's not. So maybe, just maybe, I was writing long when I did this one, and then my hand got tired and I wrote short when I did that other one. Who the hell knows? But what's interesting, again, a commentary on the kind of world in which we live. You, as someone who wasn't even born, you were probably born 30 years, 20 to 30 years after Bruce Lee died. 20 to 30 years after Bruce Lee died. But you were able, because of the world in which we live, you were able to come online and spew this nonsense out essentially to millions of people because of the reach of the YouTube, right? Because of the reach of social media. And you're able to couch it in the familiar, don't hate the player, hate the game, or don't blame me, I'm just the messenger, right? When your message is, you know, it says Daniel Inosanto on one certificate, but it says Dan Inosanto on the other certificate. And that might be evidence of something dodgy, as my good friends Terry Valor and Mark Black and Mick Tully might say. Right? It's ridiculous. It's not evidence of anything at all. But in the world of cognitive bias, I guess, or even cognitive dissonance or whatever the heck, because I'm sure there's a psychological term for jackasses who do stuff like this, right? You get on the internet and impugn the reputation of somebody who has contributed so much in the world of martial arts. Forget the world of Jeet Kune Do, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. So now everybody knows where my loyalties are at. Not blind loyalties, as Richard Torres and I were talking about, but my loyalties. You know, there are people trained by Dan Inosanto whose names, whose name we're very familiar with those names. And then there are some badass people trained by Dan Inosanto and Richard Bustillo, whose names we're not at all familiar with, right? Now, I do what I can to bring those guys on the other podcast. You know what I'm talking about, right? Cameron Rico, Davis Lear. I think there's a guy named Terrence Mathis. I haven't been able to track him down yet or what have you. But we're talking about people who can do the thing, man, right? But they're not well known in the JKD world. But all these people trace back to Dan Inosanto. So it's ridiculous to come, but you know, I'm just saying, right? It looks a little bit ridiculous. Anyhow, those were those three news items. And you know, anytime I put something in inverted commas, I'm making fun, not just the thing itself. I'm also poking fun at myself for even calling it whatever. Anyhow, yeah, one of these days I'll show you my full instructor certificate, because one day somebody might see it and go, oh, well, look, Dan Inosanto's name is faded out. So maybe Dwight never even got promoted, because ink fades, as I said to the guy. Anyhow, that's enough of that, right? So you guys let me know what you think in the comments below. That's all I'm going to say in this video. If you like what you heard, comment, rate, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D Woods, at paypal.me/unifiedma Miami. The Jeet Kune Do Journey Volume 1 raw but edited version is available. paypal.me/unifiedma Miami. If you go to jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link. That's where you'll see stuff like this. The JKD Notables coffee mug, also available in garment form, long sleeve, short sleeve, hoodie, sweatshirt, all that good stuff. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share these videos and spread the word about the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Now, that notorious second podcast that I mentioned, the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues, and by the way, coming up on Friday, we'll have an open mic session, Friday at 6 p.m. So if you've got questions for me, start sending them in. You can message me if we're friends on Facebook. I think you can message me, email them to me at jkdrebel@gmail or what have you. Once I put up the postcard, which will probably be tomorrow, you can start commenting and put your questions in the comments. But if you go to the YouTube channel for Jeet Kune Do Dialogues and just hit the join button, and then you can see the different levels of sponsorship and membership there. But again, that's it. Okay, so today is an indigo day. There you go. Right. So I will see you guys on Friday at 6 p.m. If not, see you back here next week for another issue of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Until then, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. You guys take care. Talk soon. Keep moving back.